For this episode today, we are going to be pulling from some TikTok videos. We are doing this under fair use. Fair use is a legal document in the United States copyright law that allows limited use of copyrighted material without permission from the copyright holder. It is an exception to copyright, balancing the rights of creators with the public interest in the free flow of information and creative expression. This allows for creators to give commentary over issues at hand. With that being said, all of the TikToks that are used as references for this episode will be linked down in the description box below, so you can go and follow the creator who originally put the TikTok up. I also want to go ahead and give a great big thank you to all of our patrons and our producers here on Esoteric Atlanta. It is Mercury retrograde right now, and it does seem that every Mercury retrograde I have a hard time accessing the Patreon account. They're always undergoing some sort of issue, so that's why the names are not listed. But I do thank you all, and hopefully after Mercury retrograde I will be able to put your names back up on the screen. You guys truly have supported the work that we do on this channel, and I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. If you would like to help support the work that we do here, there is a link to our Patreon account down in the description box below. You guys, I did not have a season 2 of Shiny Happy People on my bingo card for 2025. But here we are. And season 2 is so much, in my opinion, is so much juicier than season 1, because I think a lot of us who grew up in the 90s definitely probably relate to more of season 2 than season 1. So my friends, let's get into it. For those who don't know, Shiny Happy People is a documentary that is produced and put on Amazon Prime. Now, season 1 was about the IBLP, and Bill Gothard Institute in Basic Life Principles. So it got into more of like the Duggars and more of the quiverful form of this high controlled organization through more of the Baptist movements. Again, if you're not from the United States, we had a reality show on our TVs for many years called 19 Kids and Counting. This was again the Duggars. Josh Duggar is now in prison, the oldest son, for inappropriate pictures on his computer. Huge scandal. There's just been a lot, the Duggars presented themselves as a shiny, happy person. But obviously, there was a lot hidden in the shadows of this family. And definitely, they were involved in more of a cult than an actual spiritual practice. And so, Shiny Happy People season 1 was a huge phenomenon. It was a huge success because, again, especially here in the United States, a lot of us know of the Duggars. We know of the scandals with Josh Duggar, all that kind of stuff. And it was just kind of like this family it's too good to be true, right? If it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. So I was unaware they were going to be doing a season 2. And I was just scrolling down the streets of the TikTok when I happened upon a TikTok from some random person in my For You page talking about season 2 that had just dropped and this whole teen mania phenomenon. And I was listening to her and I was like, oh my God, that sounds really familiar, because when I was growing up, I went on something called The Great Escape with my youth group, with my church. And I've kind of spoken about my youth pastor. He was definitely a problem. But my flavor of evangelical Christianity growing up was more like season 2 of Shiny Happy People than season 1 of. They're polar opposites. They're both season 1 and season 2 are looking at fundamentalist Christianity, but packaged differently. So again, season 1 was very folky. It was about, the super conservative, where women don't wear pants, and they grow their hair super long, and they court, all that kind of stuff. Whereas season 2 from my opinion, it's looking at more of like the mainstream secular Christian homes, which is again probably that's why I recognized a lot of it. Both are extremely problematic. We're going to get into it. With that being said, before we start, just a heads up. I just debated this morning whether I wanted to divide this project into three separate videos because there are three different episodes, or if I just wanted to do one long video. And I've decided that I'm going to do this as one long video. So we're going to be doing episode one, episode two, and episode three all in one sitting. So, the reason why I am doing it this way is because I have been in contact with some of the participants of the documentary and I'm hoping to get them on the channel. So, I want to make sure that the foundation of this story is put out there for you guys before we bring some of the participants on so that my viewers, especially who are not from the United States, have a better understanding of what we're going to be talking about, hopefully, if they come on the show. So if you see me, I'm filming this. With that being said, I'm filming this over the course of a few days because there's a lot of information to go through. So if you see my outfit changing, if you see my hairstyle changing, you're not crazy. I'm just filming it over the course of a few days. Okay. So with that being said, let's get into it. This is Shiny Happy People Season 2, A Teenage Holy War, where we are starting with episode 1 entitled Acquire the Fire. So, as we start season 1, we start off with Jim Bob Duggar and Michelle Duggar's niece and her husband, Amy Duggar, and her husband kind of reacting to Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar's rebuttal from season 1, because definitely season 1 did not make the Duggars look good at all. And so we kind of start season 2 laughing about like this ridiculous rebuttal that the Duggars had made to season 1. And in it, they start talking about Teen Mania and the Acquire the Fire events, concerts with Amy's husband, because apparently he went to some of them. And that again kicks us off now into season 2. So I actually wrote in my notes where season 1 was hokey, season 2 gets into the punk rock alternative youth ministry of the 90s. Again, so a more secular costume, we'll say. They kind of come in kind of mimicking the secular culture to wheel kids into this youth ministry. One of the participants called Acquire the Fire the Coachella for youth groups, which I thought was absolutely the perfect way to describe this. As I said, I don't know if I've said this yet, might have said this in another video. I myself went to something called The Great Escape. I think I went to two they were like summer camps, but they were very familiar. Like my memories, this was like in middle school, but my memories of The Great Escape um very much resembled the footage that they showed of Acquire the Fire. And so I'm wondering, I've done a little bit of digging, but I'm wondering if The Great Escape was part of this whole package with Ron Luce, which we're going to talk more about Ron Luce in a minute. I don't know. It gave me like the heebie-jeebies to like watch some of the footage because it's just so manipulative. It's so manipulative. And so the overall gist of this docuseries, as we're going to get into, is that basically what we're seeing with these extremely polarizing religious groups is we're seeing religion crossing the line into politics. And I have a huge problem with this. I talk about this a lot. I don't care what religion it is. If you are trying to push your religion into politics, then you are treading on the Constitution. You are revoking and you are blocking somebody else's constitutional rights. We have the right to freedom of religion. In fact, we see a lot, we're going to see a lot where there's this manipulation of how America is a Christian country and blah blah blah. No, it's not. No, it's not. Our forefathers very much believed in God. I mean, the creator is in the Declaration of Independence. However, my friends, our forefathers and our ancestors here in America had come from, for the most part, from Europe, where there had been wars of religion. Now, the Protestant Reformation. Now, this was all under the umbrella of the same damn religion, right? So, like, and it got, heads were getting popped off left, right, and center, burnings at the stake, all sorts of inquisitions had happened, just extremely brutal, all under the umbrella of the same religion. Just because people had different views in doctrine under the umbrella of the same religion, like the same Jesus, the same Bible. And so, if it could get that brutal between different sects of the same religion, our forefathers had the wherewithal to understand that this could get even more extreme if we're mixing in other faiths. And so, we are granted in our Constitution a freedom of religion, meaning that there has to be a separation of church and state. There has to be. We cannot mix the two. This ensures freedom for every American citizen. You can practice whatever religion you want as long as you are not hurting another person, as long as everybody within your facility of religion is consenting, you're good. Yeah, it's fine. So, this is why this is concerning to me. Now, if you want examples of theology or theocracy, rather, gone wrong, you just have to look at the Middle East to see why this is a problem. And that we should absolutely respect other people's religious beliefs, again, as long as they're not hurting anybody else or infringing on somebody else's rights. And that's what's happening. So this is literally fascism, what we're seeing, right? It's negatively polarized. So we're going to get deeper into that. There is a journalist that you see throughout this docuseries named Jeff Charlotte. Now, he points out that the problem is these guys are more political than actually Christian. And so this is a hostile takeover that he feels like he's great. He has spent a lot of time following these religious groups, and I agree with him. They are using and manipulating vulnerability. So religion is vulnerability. People are vulnerable, especially when you're using teenagers. We're going to get deeper into the whole Moolok thing that I spoke about over on TikTok and why I feel like children were used in a greater scheme. But we also, from a very practical perspective, kids, their brain isn't fully developed, so they're easy to manipulate. And so, this journalist, from my perspective of what he was saying, what I took from what he was saying, again, go watch the docuseries yourself. He kind of saw through the bells and whistles, right? He saw what was going on, that this wasn't really about religion. These people were fanatics in their religion, but they were using religion to scare children, to create martyrs out of children in order to have a hostile takeover of the United States government. And that's scary. That again, this is why we have the freedom of religion in this country. We have to respect that. All right. So before we get deeper into it, I want to go ahead and introduce you to some of our, I'll say characters for lack of a better word. They're not characters, they're human beings. They're badass human beings who really helped take down or really put their voices out to try to spread the awareness of what's happening with this particular organization. We first meet Mika Ringo, and I apologize. I hope I'm saying their names correctly. So if I'm not, you can correct me in the comment section. And what we're going to learn later on in episode 3 is that Mika is kind of the ringleader of this group of alumni who are speaking up. Again, these are people around my age. I'm 42. They're all in that age group. These were millennial, evangelical millennials, is what one of them called these kids. So Mika is the one that started a website, which again, we're going to get to in season 3, where she's speaking about her issues, what happened to her with this group, and then other people joined, and thus now we have season 2 of Shiny Happy People. So Mika is from Tampa, Florida. She talked about how her dad passed away at 11 years old. I think this is really important because, again, I talked about that vulnerability. So especially with a child, I mean, listen, anybody can be manipulated at any point. It doesn't matter how old you are. We have to be aware of that when you, especially when you've gone through a loss and you're questioning life and you're desperate for answers. You are in the perfect position to be taken in and manipulated. And so I'm glad that she shared that. She was also an only child, so she didn't have siblings to go through this with her. So it shows kind of perhaps more of the subliminal isolation she might have felt at 11 years old using her parent. So she said she was at church like 6 days a week. And I get that because maybe even a psychiatrist or a psychologist probably would be better equipped at answering this. But I think it's pretty obvious that at this point, Mika probably felt kinship with kids her own age. She probably felt some reassurance because it's church, and so there is speakings and talks of an afterlife, and so there becomes some sort of answer to your suffering. And so we have the perfect storm at this point. So Mika gets heavily involved in the church in the 90s. Only child, father has passed away in Tampa, Florida. She's at church a lot. Then we're introduced to a man named Corey Wright. Now, I thought Corey was hysterical. His parents were pastors. So he said that he kind of grew up with this expectation of ministry. People used to call him Rev, like Reverend, because his parents were pastors. And I can imagine that that's a lot of pressure on a child when your parents are in the ministry. He was a dancer. And so he always felt like his ministry was through dance. Now, I can say as a student of the Law of One that, yeah, that's his service to others is through his dance. Now, it's hysterical when they go through some of the music that was used in this group. Like he still remembers a lot of the rap music. It's so funny. Then we meet Jedediah Jenkins, and he wrote Mother Nature. And he's the one that talked about us being millennial kids without a fair Christian representation in Hollywood. And I wrote ding, ding, ding in my notes right here. And this was 90s consumer culture. We have MTV is big, Girls Gone Wild. The millennials, I'm a millennial, I cusp 1983, I cusp the two. But this is our generation is a very peculiar generation because we were the first generation. We were, coming in at the turn, we were becoming adults at the turn of the century, not just the turn of the century into a new millennium. We have all of a sudden we have the internet. Like I grew up learning the Dewey Decimal System, which was how you use the computer, how you use the library to do research, like the book, the card catalog, and going and find the books. That's how I was taught to research. And then all of a sudden, halfway through college, like all of a sudden it's all on the internet now. So we had both. And so we were at the forefront of this new technological advancement in society. We also have, my mother talks about, she was born in, I think, 1956. And she talks about how she remembers when they got their first TV. But like my childhood, we don't remember a time without the TV or the phone. We now have the cell phone. Like this is a very different world in the 90s for 90s kids than any other generation before us. And I know every generation probably says that, but in a major way because of the technological advancements that were made. And so, like, I had a TV in my room as a kid, so did my sister, and we were allowed to watch. My parents were pretty laid back, though. We were allowed to like watch TV and do our homework as long as our grades were okay. So I would watch these MTV shows. I would watch these Dawson's Creek, and I still now love 90s music because that's from my teenage years and my childhood. And so he hits on something that all of a sudden we have kids that are being exposed to art, basically it's art, in a faster way than any other generation before. It's just on our TV screens. Again, we didn't have cell phones yet, but it was right there on our TV screens. And of course, all this grunge music had come out in the early 90s. We've got, Snoop and all these rappers coming out. Eminem's coming on the scene, Atlantis Morissette. We have all these different music. We're moving from cassette tape to CDs. And then eventually it's going to move to computerized iTunes. And so I feel like the church kind of panicked because unlike any other generation before, I feel like the church maybe or a section of the felt like they were losing control of their youth. Their youth were more interested in perhaps more secular consumerism, which is silly because this is art, right? Music is art. Music is art. TV is art. This is art. And so we have, I think, this panic from these factions within the Christian church. And I know that this is not every Christian. There are lots of, like, my parents are very secular people, even though they're Christians. Like, I remember when I was super young, my parents still had their record player, and my sister and I would play with their old records from the 70s. So we learned how to do the record player. My mom's favorite band is The Who. She took us to see the play. I think I was like 8 when my mother took me to see the play Tommy. And I remember one of my teachers being like, I can't believe, like, Alice, I can't believe you brought your 8-year-old daughter to see Tommy. And my mom was like, well, she didn't really understand the premise of Tommy. If you know the play Tommy, you know what I'm talking about. She just liked the music. And theater was important to my parents. They took us to plays all the time. They wanted us to have an understanding of the theater, of the arts. And so my parents, we had a bar in our house. My parents were drinkers, very social people. So my parents were very much the target audience of parents for this, for what was happening in the evangelical church. We were Presbyterian. And so my parents didn't have a problem with us watching MTV or doing these things or wearing a bikini. We still went to church every Sunday and every Wednesday. We were part of the youth group. And this does get into like youth group culture. And I have a problem with youth groups. I'm not a huge, I think there's something very strange. I don't know when the idea of a youth group started. I have a feeling I need to look into that. I have a feeling it's probably more of a modern thing. Like, I don't remember my mother ever talking about going to youth group when she was a kid. And so I don't know if the youth groups popped up around this time. I just don't think it's appropriate. Youth groups. I understand that it's a great place to drop your kids off where you know they're going to be safe, but I do think there's a lot of indoctrination that's happening. There's a lot of abuse that's happening through manipulation. I've shared some of my stories before. A terrible youth director that was awful in my church growing up, and it was very manipulative. You've got young minds, as I said, these are vulnerable. Their mind has not been developed yet, and so I personally don't see youth groups as a positive thing anyway. But nonetheless, this Jebediah Jenkins, who wrote Mother Nature, really hits the nail on the head on looking back on what was going on and how this was a culture clash. You've got the old gospel music that we're singing on Sundays, but then you have this new grunge and rap and all this stuff. Blues Travelers, Oasis, Presidents of the United States of America. You guys remember that band? You got all this stuff coming up. And so the church is now going to try to find a way to capitalize on this, to take this 90s consumer culture opposite of season one, where it's quiverful and they completely reject this lifestyle. These are kids who went to public school or private school in my case. We were not separated from the world. So, how are we going to now capitalize on the culture of these millennials through MTV? But also pull them into our control. And so, with that being said, they were smart. They created a template of this MTV, of these rock bands, these rap bands that resembled what we're watching on MTV, but with a twist of Jesus in there. We also meet a woman named April Ajoy. I hope I'm saying her last name right. She wrote the book Star Spangled Jesus. And she talks about how in the 90s culture, they believed the devil was just barging in. The devil was barging in with all these new secular cultural phenomenons that were happening. We also meet a woman named Sarah McCannon. And I'm not sure, she right now is an NPR correspondent. I don't know. I'm kind of confused if she grew up going to Teen Mania or if she just grew up a conservative Christian and now she's on the other side of the spectrum. So she's giving her perspective. Nonetheless, she talks about and God, like this kind of gave me like PTSD when she was talking because she talked a lot about Dr. James Dodson, who really pushed focusing on the family. He focused on corporal punishment. And he would often say that we need to pray God would restore Christianity to the United States, which again goes back to this problem called the Constitution, that we need to allow people the human respect of giving them freedom of religion. We're not a fascist government. We are not a theocracy. So we just need to pray that people are healthy and happy and are worshiping God if they choose in whatever way they choose to do that. And so she talked a lot about him and how he was a big name um, in the evangelical world of the 90s. They showed things about like Promise Keepers, which I think my dad went to some Promise Keepers rallies. It was a rally for men who were married, which didn't work because my dad and my mom got divorced. I think my dad had some girlfriends. So LOL, like what was he doing? I mean, this was just very strange. It was very strange. They introduced us to Zachariah Dunn. I hope I'm saying his last name. He's great because he was like a gothic kid, and all of these people are going to be in every episode. So these are our storytellers. These people who experienced this group, these are definitely our storytellers for this episode. Now, again, they thought the solution, the powers that be thought the solution was to infuse Christianity into the larger culture through uh, bands and networks that mimicked MTV. We also meet a woman named Danny Roca Herbert. She is now currently a gospel singer. We're going to get more into her story later on because they do something incredibly awful to her that I just had a hard time watching, which we're going to get to when we get to that place in this docuseries. And we meet a woman named Carrie Saum. I hope I'm saying her last name right, Saum. She's also a survivor. And now we're going to get to one of my favorite people. And this is Liz and Phil Boltz. Now, they're a sibling duo. And I kid you not, they, for the most part, are the comic relief of this docuseries. They're two siblings. They're so funny. They make light of some very serious things. I have actually messaged Liz on TikTok. I'm hoping she's going to come on the show with her brother because they are delightful. When we got through watching it, my boyfriend and I were like, man, we'd really like to get a beer with them. Like they're so funny. And I just really enjoy them. In fact, I started writing down things that they had said, like funny things they said, but I was like, no, I'm going to let you go and watch it because they are truly, truly delightful. Now, their father, interesting, is a man named Ray Boltz. Now, Ray Boltz, I don't know, I didn't know who he was, and I need to ask my mom if she knows who he is. He is a Christian singer, so he was an evangelical celebrity. And he worked a lot, from what it seems, with Ron Luce, which we're going to get to in a second, creating music and inspirational music for some of maybe his marketing. So they kind of have a double whammy. Now, from following them on Instagram or TikTok now, they do seem to come from a pretty comical family, like a pretty lighthearted family. I think I would love to be at their Thanksgiving. And they do definitely go through a lot of trauma, which we're going to get into as the docuseries progresses, but super delightful sibling duo that are interviewed together for this docuseries. Now we meet Ron Luce. Ronnie. This is a charismatic leader on a motorcycle. He did this show called Fire by Night, or he was on, excuse me, a show called Fire by Night, which was like the MTV of a Christian station. So again, mimicking that MTV, he was the host of a segment called What's Hot. And he was definitely a showman. Like he definitely has like the it factor to sell something. He definitely can talk. I personally, in my personal, unprofessional opinion, believe that he is a malignant narcissist. We'll get more into his behavior patterns. I don't think a normal person who has empathy would be able to pull off what he pulled off because it's pretty maniacal what he pulled off. And I think you definitely have to be a malignant narcissist to do this. So that's Ron Luce. He's coming across as this cool guy on a motorcycle, and he's hosting this segment called What's Hot on this Christian MTV. And like he's really good at reaching children. When I say children, I mean like teenagers. He's not much older than the teenagers himself. He and his wife end up starting their own ministry called Teen Mania. So Teen Mania takes kids on mission trips all over the world. From what I understand from the docuseries, it seems to me, again, remember, I believe in my opinion that Ron is a malignant narcissist. I think he believed that he was responsible to get Jesus back. And I think he thought that, from what they said, that if he could get these teenagers to go on these missions all over the world and teach everyone about Jesus, Jesus would come back again. So that is, for me, psychologically, that just is so many red flags. Because, well, first of all, if you've been following along on this channel for a while, I have my suspicions that the apocalypse already happened. But that's neither here nor there. That's just my opinion based on some of my research. But nonetheless, when we think about the return of Christ, we think about this apocalyptic shit show, right? I remember being in youth group in like the 90s and hearing people talk about how they couldn't wait for Jesus to come back and they wanted to live through this. And I remember thinking, why? You really want to see people suffering? What are you talking about? I don't want to see people suffering. And I think, again, that goes back to a certain personality type and people who are just evil and, feel like they have something to prove and maybe feel they just they want to see suffering with people. And so I feel like that was Ron's goal, was to get Jesus to come back so he could watch people be in pain. But no fear, he gets to see people in pain because he develops a cult. So anyway, he would travel from youth group to youth group and he would give like this fire and brimstone message. So he would scare the kids. Here we have this pop culture, this, all this stuff, this MTV, Girls Gone Wild, that we're all watching as kids. It's part of our culture, it's part of our generation. It says nothing about us as people, but he's out there scaring children, thinking that they're going to go to hell. Okay, that's what he's doing. And in the same time, he's mixing this with pop culture. This is total manipulation. So let's take a moment to get into Ron's youth. And this episode today is sponsored by the Esoteric Academy, your at-home gym for all different unique workouts, health programs, courses, and community. If you've been looking for a way to get in shape, but you feel like you're too busy to go to the gym or too intimidated to go to the gym, no worries. The Esoteric Academy is your at-home stop for all your health needs. It only has master teachers, and if you are looking for something to get your butt in gear, to get healthy, but you can do it in the privacy of your own home, then the Esoteric Academy is for you. If you use discount code BRICE20, BRICE 20, all caps at checkout, you get the first 6 months of your tuition at the Esoteric Academy for 20% off. That's the first 6 months. That's half a year of a 20% discount on your tuition. Tuition includes 2 different tiers. One is only $25 a month, which gives you access to all of the exercise classes, which you have a full library full of workout classes with new workout classes coming 2 to 4 times a week. If you want to do the $40 tier, that also gives you access to all the health courses and spiritual courses as well as the exercise courses. On top of that, you get 7 days for free. So even if you just want to give it a try, you're just hearing about this and you just want to try it out, you can sign up, have 7 days for free, and if you decide it's not for you, you can always cancel your membership. So remember, use discount code BRICE20, BRICE20 at checkout for the Esoteric Academy to get 20% off your tuition for the first 6 months. Everything will be down in the description box below. Ronnie. Now, I know that trauma is relative and it's all in the mind of the perceiver. But bro, like you have this story of this traumatic childhood and that's what you would feed to these kids, but literally my childhood was worse than yours. I mean, come on. So Ron claims that he had no good memories of childhood. Same, bro. At 7, his parents divorced and he lived with his mom, which is what typically happens. You usually live with the mother. At 15, he runs away to find his father, and then he starts smoking the devil's lettuce with his dad. Same. What's wrong with the devil's lettuce? Literally no big deal. Apparently, he gives this big tale that his life started to fall apart because of the devil's fucking lettuce. Like, come on, give me a break. You were probably more tolerable on the devil's lettuce. So he decided to go to church with a friend. And it does seem like the church he went to is probably, in my opinion or perspective of what the story was, probably more. Listen, guys, who even knows if this story is true or not? Narcissists like to rewrite history. And I'm not saying he's a narcissist. In my opinion, he's a narcissist, but that is something that narcissists do is they rewrite history. So who's to even to say that this is all accurate? But he goes to a church. A friend invites him to church, and it seems like if this story is to be believed, this is probably more of like a Pentecostal church, like a happy, happy, clappy, clappy church where they're like speaking in tongues. It made a huge impact on him, and he discovered angry Christ or angry Jesus. That Jesus wasn't this like punk ass wussy sitting in the corner, that he actually was kind of like a badass, like, bro. Like, even though we know that the real guy was never crucified, like, we know that, we've done that research, this is all the Mithra story. Let's just say he was. You would have to be kind of badass to be able to go through that. So, anyway, so he gets like super amped up on this like angry Jesus. Like, now he has a reason, he has a purpose in life. And so he dedicates his life to angry Jesus. His stepmother apparently then proceeds to kick him out of the house because he's a Jesus freak. I don't believe this for a second. If his stepmother kicked him out of the house, it probably was because he was a bully and possibly abusive. And if he had any half siblings, I mean, I see the writing on the wall. But anyway, he's worshiping angry Jesus. According to him, he gets kicked out of his dad's house by his stepmother because he's an angry Jesus freak. And now he sets this stage where he's now this young guy who's been rejected by both his parents. So now he's going to build his own family of followers. In his talks, and this pisses me off so much, this reminds me of my youth director too. Like, this is a telltale sign of a cult. He encourages kids to lose their friends who aren't Christian or aren't Christian enough. That's isolation. Don't do that. Don't do that. Gross. That's so gross. Um, these little teen mania talks that he would give got so big that he literally went from churches to having to perform his talks in stadiums, which makes sense to me because I believe he's a narcissist. And narcissists do have a way of like enchanting people with their charisma. He definitely would love bomb the kids, make the kids feel like they were elite. I believe that word elite was passed around a lot on this docu-series, that they were the ones responsible for babe basically being Captain Save a Ho. Like, they're the ones that are going to go around the world and save people from their immortal sins. Now these kids have purpose. They feel like, because teenage angst, that they have some grand role in life to play. These events got so big that they started to turn this into like a tour, kind of like how bands go on tour. And so they would go to a city basically, and they would tell all the youth groups, and all the youth groups would come together for this event at a stadium. And I think they would do, according to the docu-series, they would do about 60 per year. And they called these events through Teen Mania Acquire the Fire. And they created the show. They had like fire, they had skits, they had bands, as I said earlier, as one dude said, this was like Coachella for youth groups. And the really cool thing for the kids was that all of this was put on by other kids, known as the interns. So say they would see these teenagers walking around with headsets on, doing all these cool things, creating this show. And so this was super, I believe this was a ploy, an emotional ploy, because here you are in this huge stadium with a bunch of hormonal teenagers your own age. You've got this cool, display, like a Broadway play going off. You're seeing it being pulled off by kids your own age in headgear. They definitely played with their the emotions. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. They definitely played with their emotions. And the whole time I was watching this, I was like, this is no different than like a Rolling Stones concert. Like the emotions that you feel at like a rock and roll concert. That's what these kids were feeling. The only difference is at a rock and roll concert, there's no manipulation. You're singing the songs, you're doing the thing, and then that ends, there's an encore, and then everyone goes home. No one's trying to sell you anything. Nobody's telling you to go off and like save the world. No one's telling you anything like that. You're just there to experience the art and then you go home. Well, with this, what they would do is they would pull these kids' emotions up, get them real jazzed and real high on this experience. And of course, because they're all together and they're all riding this wave together, they think that this is some spiritual experience that they're having. No, I mean, it could be like I do think the art is a spiritual experience, but this, in my opinion, is manipulation put on by a malignant narcissist who knows how to manipulate people. So you're being told that you're this elite human, that God has you picked out. You're a chosen one. You're special. You're special. God's going to put you back together. He's going to forgive you of your sins. I'm sorry, what possible sins could a 15-year-old have done? Like, what horrible transgression has a 13-year-old done? Like, this is ridiculous. What, you got into an argument with your parents, or you did something mean to your siblings, or you cheated on a spelling test? Like, these are children. These are children. They haven't had a chance to do something super horrible yet. But yet they're made to feel like they're this scum of the earth, but God's going to put them back together. And on top of that, you know what? You are so off the pedestal and then back on the pedestal. You're elite. You're special. God is using, it's up to you to save the world. Now you have to go out there to all and save the world and give your life to Christ. So this is all going on. You also have Ron Luce there, who is by this point a Christian celebrity. And unlike like rock concerts with real celebrities, a lot of times the celebrity is still kind of kept apart from the crowd unless you have like backstage passes or VIP tickets. You're in the same arena with your favorite singer, but you're not going to meet them per se, right? And you know that going to the concert. But because Ron Luce's main objective was a youth minister, you have this celebrity who's created this Coachella for youth, and you're now meeting him. Like, he's there. So there is so much unbelievable vulnerability and manipulation happening. Again, I'm going to reiterate, at this time in the 90s, Ron Luce is not that much older than these children, okay? So after all this heightened emotion, they have what's called the altar call, which, I'm sorry, adults that do this to kids should be charged with child abuse, because these adults know what they're doing. The kids don't have a clue what's happening to them, that they're being manipulated. So they would talk about how the lights in the stadium would go dim. You've already been hyped up on all this emotion, and this big, white, bright cross would drop down. Ron would then ask you to make a commitment. But my question I wrote in my notes, who are you making this commitment to, though? Are you making this commitment to God or to him? Because it sounds like he's merging the two. Maybe Ron himself has a bit of a God complex here. So he's asking you to get right with God. Kids are crying. And he talks about how God, I wrote this down verbatim, God sets you on fire. That's why you're acquiring the fire, and you are his vessel to save the world. What punk ass teenager who has teenage angst, who is dealing with their hormones, who now is coming up to the precipice of leaving high school, going to college or a trade school. They're now considered adults. This is a very stressful time in someone's life. On top of that, your brain's not fully developed. You don't have your seventh chakra yet. You're still developing that wisdom chakra. So you're being given a purpose now with a bunch of other teenagers your age. What 16, 17-year-old young boy or young girl isn't going to want to go follow the other 16 and 17-year-olds? Your hormones are going crazy, all that kind of stuff. They know this. They know this. The adults in the room know this. The adults in the room know this. The adults in the room should be held accountable for this. So now, after all of this has happened and you've given your life to God, aka Ron, and you're crying with all these newfound friends, you've been convinced now to get rid of all of your friends who aren't Christian or aren't as Christian as you. So you've now isolated yourself with this particular flavor of crazy. And now Ron is saying, we want you, you are responsible to save the world. It's up to you. You're Captain Save-A-Ho. We got to take you around the world now to all these far off foreign countries so that you can save the souls of these people who without you would burn in hell. And so if you really want to serve God, if you really, really want to put your faith in God, you will serve a mission with us this summer.
All of the millions of people who weren't so lucky to see a mime troupe of teens, I guess they're all just burning in hell for all eternity. Sorry about that.
So after the concert's over, people are feeling the emotions, they're feeling the obligation, and they go into a back room to watch a video about going on a summer missions trip. They have to pay for it. So they encourage you to fundraise and to fund it, and you can do it all without your parents. So this pissed me off. This made me so mad. They would talk about how this is all without your parents, and it's not that you don't have the money. You just have to find the pockets of someone who does have money to donate it to you, do fundraisers to raise the money to get you to like Venezuela to do this marketing for God. Now, Phil or Ron, excuse me, Ron Luce would also manipulate the parents because parents would be worried, rightly so, about their child's safety. What do you mean you're going to take my 13-year-old kid to freaking Bolivia with very few adults and drop them off in the middle of town to do this? They would do these dramas, these mimes of reenacting Jesus. What do you mean? I'm worried about my child's safety. There are cartels down there. What do you mean? So Ron would manipulate the parents and say, well, if you just trust God, your child would be okay. So now the parents are being guilt tripped to let their child go to their underage youth, go off to a third world country or a developing country with a bunch of other underage youths who don't know jack shit about the way the world works, with some adults, a few adults who themselves are more interested in their own ego to really care about the safety of these children. As I said, they would make these children, the way that they would witness to the world is they would do skits. They would do these skits to portray Jesus in whatever language the country spoke where they were. And they would have these, put this pressure on these kids to give them numbers at the end of the day. How many kids, how many people did you turn over to Christ today? So it became like this marketing job. And then these kids would feel responsible. If they couldn't get somebody to turn their life over to Christ, it was their responsibility. They didn't do the right thing. They were bad. Meanwhile, in some of these third world countries, something that these children probably didn't recognize is that most of the people they were interacting with were just trying to feed their family. Because these are not third world children. These are American children who live in a very wealthy country, an amazing country, and they're in these other cultures where people don't even have water. And so you're trying to do these skits to sell these people that God, believe in God, believe in not take our culture over yours. So that's what it is a culture clash, right? This is our culture. Forget your own culture. You should come to our culture. And these kids are sincere. These kids are very sincere. They've been manipulated to believe that if they don't do this, these people are going to burn in hell. And then they're guilted if they don't have the numbers at the end of the day. Liz Boltz tells a story about how they were in India and this one woman had a leg that was significantly shorter than the other leg. And they were praying over this woman and praying over this woman, believing that God's going to lengthen her leg right there, but nothing happens, obviously. And so they're confused because they have all this faith and they don't know when they should stop praying or they should keep praying, and it just gets crazy. So now these kids are carrying this guilt for things that are out of their control because they have to turn around to their, let's call a spade, their abuser, and give their abuser people that have not necessarily dedicated their life to God, but to their abuser. See what I'm saying? Now, Phil Boltz on the same India trip his sister were talking about, he talked about how he got an appendicitis in a very small town in India. You guys know, if you've been here for a while, I spend a lot of time in India. I go back and forth to India, and I am telling you, there are villages in India where you do not want to be stuck out there if something like this happens. They didn't have, again, much guardianship. They had a little book on how to handle things. He realized it was an appendicitis. He went to the place he could go there. He got an appendectomy. He ended up getting MRSA, an infection. I've told my stories of my time in Indian hospital. I've been very sick in India too. And his parents were not getting the right information. His parents were told, he's fine, he's fine, he's fine. Well, another adult was on the trip with him, a guardian, and this adult called his parents and said, you need to meet your son at the airport and take him immediately to the emergency room. Phil flies back to the United States. His parents meet him at They meet him at the airport and take him directly to the emergency room where he's stuck in the hospital for 3 weeks. So that shows you how neglected these children truly were and how manipulated they were and how manipulated the parents were. Phil talks about how Ron Luce came to see him, and it was like a celebrity walking in. And he writes this Bible verse down about battle wounds for God, and he changes it to world changers. So all of a sudden now they're manipulating this situation that could have been deadly as to something that was just faith testing and blah blah blah. Listen, I had my appendix out at 12. Nobody told me it was a battle wound for God. It was just an appendicitis. It happens sometimes. So we see the manipulation. So kids are doing their summer internships, their summer missionaries. They're going, they're getting all this pressure. They're coming back home. And of course, like any good cult, it's never enough. That carrot at the end of the stick keeps dangling further and further away. The goalpost keeps moving. They want more from you, more from you, more from you. And this takes us now to the Honor Academy. So, from what we've learned from Mika, Ringo, one of the people talking about this, the main girl, she said that Teen Mania was divided up into three different like businesses, basically Acquire the Fire, Global Expeditions, and the Honor Academy. The Honor Academy was Teen Mania's campus. It was located in Lindale, Texas. And this is where things get really, really bad. For these kids who are being pushed to go further and harder and give their all, once they graduated high school, a lot of them signed up to go to the Honor Academy where they thought they were getting an education. Turns out they were getting a lot more.
Hey, Phil.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, remember that time we were in a cult?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Like we spent all our teen years?
Yeah, lots. Many, long time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Remember when your dog was barking and we were trying to make a TikTok? Hi, Ludo.
Quiet, Ludo.
Come here, buddy. Hi, Ludo. Anyway, so like you remember when then we left the cult and then we were like pretty, like traumatized?
Yeah. It was
and
not
like
fun.
Deeply damaged?
Yeah.
And then remember when we started talking shit about Teen Mania on the internet?
Yes, which I promised never to do.
I did not promise.
Yes.
He promised. You promised.
Yeah.
You broke that promise.
I did.
So bad.
I did.
Remember when we broke it even more?
Yeah, with that other thing?
Yeah. You remember when I got an email and it was from Corey Shepard, the director of Shiny Happy People, and she was like, "Hey, I'm the director of Shiny Happy People, and here's a TikTok that you made, and I was wondering if you would talk to us about it." And I was like, "Wait, do you want to talk about Teen Mania, which was the subject of the TikTok, or do you want to talk about our dad? Like, are you
right?
People usually reach out if it's about our dad."
Yeah.
And she was like,
"Who's that?
Who's your dad?" And then remember that ended up being like part of the.
Yeah, it was part of the story.
Yeah, and I remember talking to her, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to you." And then I was like, "But my brother, you really got to talk to my brother too." Remember that? And then I called you, and I was like, "Phil, I think we're gonna be in a documentary series."
It was really fun.
Yeah, and then we did it.
Then we did it,
and now it's out.
Yay!
And people are watching it, and some people do not like it, but a lot of people do like. A lot of people do like it.
More of you do like it, and that's good.
Yeah,
that's great.
So, hi, and then remember that one other thing, which was like last week, right before the series came out, and you became my next door neighbor.
We're neighbors.
Yay!
Episode 2, Consumed by the Call. I'm not gonna lie, these last two episodes, especially episode 2, was really a tough one for me to watch. What I saw on episode 2 was full on demonic, full on, and was definitely, in my opinion, Moolok worship, which is what we know if you were here with us for the breakdown of the missing books of the Bible and the Old Testament, really diving into the nuances of the Old Testament. This is where the name Yahweh comes from. It's Moolok worship, which is basically the offering of children. The offering of children's lives, of their souls, to this god called Moloch, which is not the creator God. Nothing about this, in my opinion, nothing about this situation with Teen Mania or Acquire the Fire or Ron Luce has anything to do, hear me when I say this, has anything to do with the real God. The real God would never approve of this absolute torture, traumatizing physical, verbal, and mental abuse of children.
This is Moolok.
This is a modern day ritual to Moloch. If you don't know what I'm talking about, hello. I promise I'm not always in the bed. I have a bigger YT channel, but I'm traveling right now, and I just had to hop on here. I'm probably going to do a deeper dive for the YT when I get back to Atlanta, but Amazon Prime just released Shiny Happy People Season 2. Season 1 was about Bill Gothard and the Duggars, but Season 2 gets into like teen mania and like all these, I mean, my church did like The Great Escape, which is kind of like what they're doing, but they were like these, you know, when the Christian rock music came out, and like this guy like kind of went above and beyond, and he started to create these like different events in this academy for these kids. And I have a filter on and it looks kind of weird, but nonetheless, whatever. And it's 3 episodes, and they get deeper into what's happening in this organization that definitely is a CULT. But honestly, you guys, if you don't know, my YT channel got really big because of my deep dive into the missing books of the Bible and my work on the bloodlines, like different blood types, like RH negative, like what I am. And one thing that my friends on here that have been with me for 5 years over on YT, who did this journey with me, where we broke down the missing books of the Bible, we broke down the origins of the King James Bible, all that kind of stuff, they will know, because we all found out together, shocker, shocker, that Yahweh is Moloch. Oops. And Moloch was the god, the Canaanite god, that demanded sorry, my boyfriend walked in, that demanded a child offering, we'll say. I don't know if I can say the S word on the tiki-taki. So what we're seeing with Shiny Happy People Season 2 is the modern day version of this. It is horrifying what these children, these teens, who are my age, they were, you know, I'm in their age range. Like, you know, like I'm 42 now, but in the 90s I was a teenager. So like, I kind of remember some of this stuff. I definitely remember like Jars of Clay and like some of the rock bands, the Christian rock bands. But that's what this is. Like, this is the system of Moloch. That's what it is. It's the worship of Moloch. People will say, oh, Bryce, but that's just what they did a long time ago. That's not how it is now. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is the worship of Moloch. This dude that started this is giving these children over to Moloch. That's what this is. So I got a lot of thoughts on this. Again, I'm probably going to do a deep dive into it over on the YT when I get back to Atlanta. But yeah, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. And for my longtime viewers, I know this is going to trigger people, but you know what? As Mark Passio says, the truth by its very nature is belligerent. Like, the truth isn't here to make you comfortable. The truth is just the truth. And this is the truth. Do you believe in a system, or do you believe in God? You can't believe in both. You can believe in the system, the ritualized system, or you can believe in God. Simple as that. And this is a ritualized system to Moloch. So anyway, sorry if that triggers you. Sorry, not sorry. It is what it is. But I absolutely ask you, go and watch Season 2 of Shiny Happy People, especially for my OGs, my original subscribers, my community, where we went on this journey together. I go watch it, because you're going to be hit. Hopefully you'll be hit just like me, like, oh my God, this is so obvious what this is. This is what this is. All right, you guys, I'll talk soon. So the Honor Academy was located, or is located, at the Teen Mania campus in Lindell, Texas. The engine of Teen Mania, meant to transform you into a soldier for God. This was a 1-year internship to transform your life. As one of the participants said, This was basically taking a year out of your life to major in God. It's wild because some of these kids had actually gotten scholarships to proper colleges and universities that they turned down because they felt like they needed to go to the Honor Academy. And it might be okay if the Honor Academy was like a literal educational institution that was teaching you biblical studies, maybe helping you if you wanted to get into seminary schools, but that's not what this was at all. This was legitimately a cult that was run to serve Ron Luce and Ron Luce's derangement. When you got to the Honor Academy, you got this ring, and this ring was a dedication to the plan. They pledged loyalty for life, and they swore that they would never portray Teen Mania in a negative light, which, as we know now, super huge red flag for a cult. A high control organization does not want any criticism because that would mean critical thinking skills, and we want people just to shut up and not to question the authority. In fact, part of the main teachings of the Honor Academies was lessons in obedience. As it turns out, Ron Luce totally, in my opinion, manipulated these children to think that if they wanted to be obedient to God, then that means they had to be obedient to Ron. They were branded as having the mark of the warrior. Again, they were love bombed, told that they were the elite, that they were the chosen ones meant to save the world. And again, if any of you guys know, we've talked about narcissism a lot on this channel. This is very typical of a narcissist. They will put you on a pedestal and then they will knock you down off the pedestal. So you get loved bombed and it feels so good to have somebody telling you all these wonderful things about yourself, that you're this incredible person, you're special, you've got this special thing about you that's going to like save the world. That feels good. And so then when you're taken off the pedestal, you're doing everything you can to get back on that pedestal. Anytime the narcissist, the charismatic leader, deems you unworthy, it's always implied that your unworthiness is your own fault. And so you're trying to constantly course correct. Even the dorms, we get into this idea of martyrdom, and even the dorms were named after particular martyrs. When you got to campus, there was a bonfire where you literally were encouraged to purge your life. This meant throwing away any music, any secular music, any books that you had, anything that would give you a different perspective on the world at large or give you some sort of self-identity. Something that this group did, which is also common in other cults as well, but it's especially harrowing for these young children, is that they were literally stripped of their own identity. This gets worse and worse and worse as the episode goes on, but anything that they particularly liked themselves, whatever music they liked, books they liked, they were forced to give this up because they had to die to themselves, right, in order to be of service to God, aka Ron Luce. At this point, we meet a man named Dave Haas. Now, Dave Haas is the executive director. He is Ron's right-hand man. He started as an intern, but became the director of interns. This man, like Ron, is also very, very abusive, in my opinion. People would run to save time because Dave suggested it, like running from like lunch to whatever task they had next, just to save, the few seconds or minutes it would take to walk. This is a form of control. He was considered to be the spiritual advisor. He loved Braveheart, so he, like a lot of, I probably could assume this guy's probably also a narcissist. What they do sometimes is they try to mirror other people or other movies in order to give some sense of self. So they have a sense of self because narcissists don't have a sense of self. So it seems that he was enacting this Braveheart military-esque, marine-like corporal abuse basically on these children, these literal children. I mean, they were out there creating Marines for Angry Jesus. Can't forget about Angry Jesus. I think we need t-shirts. We need to make t-shirts. He had these kids up at 4 a.m. to work out. Now, you guys know that is typical for a spiritual practice to get up at what's called Brahma Muhurta, but that's not what this is. Please be assured. Be assured that what is happening at the Honor Academy is not what's happening over in India. at all. What's happening at the Honor Academy is abuse. What's happening in India is spiritual development. And if you experience both, or if you've ever experienced India doing this, you'll definitely see the differences. First of all, these are children. These are young kids. They should not, I've talked about this before. Children should not be doing this. You need to be fully developed in your brain before you start getting up early in the morning and committing to this type of discipline. So they're way too young. Their brain is not developed yet to be really digging into this. What they're also doing, the manner in which they're doing is he was basically saying you need to beat your body into submission. You have to beat your body in order to be a slave for God. That is not at all what's happening in a spiritual tradition. In a spiritual tradition, even though we're working hard with our bodies, we're honoring the body, we're cleansing the body, we're exploring the body, and we're not beating it into submission. We're allowing ourselves to get uncomfortable so that we can challenge the mind, but feed the health of the body, because the body is the Shakti of the soul. If you understand that your body is the Shakti of the soul, the creation of the soul for this experience, you're not going to try to beat your body into submission. Not at all. This is just yet another way of enacting total control over these kids. These kids would then have to go quickly after they worked out to change and go about their day doing their jobs. In India, we have classes after we do our morning practice, like philosophy classes, chanting classes, but we also have a lot of downtime. So there's not that control, right? We see total control here at the Honor Academy, where these children weren't really, it seems, in my opinion, from what I saw, granted much privacy. And I think every human being deserves privacy, whether you are, yeah, a child deserves a door on. I can't stand it when parents take doors off their child's bedroom. Your children deserve privacy. I even think when you're in a relationship or married, like I'm in a relationship, I think we have our times where we want to be alone and have our privacy. Nothing bad is happening. It's just times for people to like relax and regenerate themselves alone. Their alone time. Yeah, not being totally micromanaged every moment of every day. When you signed up for the Honor Academy, it seems that you were under this impression that you'd be given this real kick-ass rock star job. And only a few people were given like the fun jobs, like being the worship leader or being an assistant or being part of the executive team. Most kids were actually assigned pretty menial jobs, like working in the kitchen, cleaning the toilets, or being a telemarketer. Now, the Honor Academy was super expensive. So these children, again, were literally paying to work for Teen Mania. They were, as Phil Boltz says, they were telemarketers for Jesus. He even tells a funniest story about how they would call Jewish synagogues and they'd be like, we're Jewish, but they were so desperate to get their numbers in. Again, you guys, they're paying to do this. The company is not paying them, they're paying the company. They're so desperate to get their numbers in that they're willing to call even Jewish synagogues to try to get a sell for Ron Luce. Again, Ron Luce is not paying them, they're paying Ron Luce. And it was very, very expensive. These kids had to work really hard to pay to go to this cult to be abused by these adults who, frankly, in my opinion, after watching this documentary, side note, I do think that there needs to be a federal investigation into Ron Luce and David Haas. I do believe that they should have committed crimes against children, and I do think that they should be prosecuted for. And I do believe they should be prosecuted for those crimes. This is child abuse, 100%. And they know it. They know what they're doing. This is not about God. This has nothing to do with God. Don't bring God into this, Ron. This is the devil, Ron. Who you're worshiping is the effing devil. It's Moloch. Plain and simple. Get over yourself and your freaking narcissism. You're not the center of the universe. You're not special. And you have no right to treat these children this way. They try to isolate these children from things that make them them, like the music they like and the books they like, to try to separate them from their parents, to plant this type of thought in their head that their parents would never understand, and then to manipulate the parents when they're worried about their children, making the parents feel like they don't have a faith in God because they're worried about their children. This is crazy. This is absolutely effing crazy. You should be in prison, Ron. You should be in prison. You're a criminal felon according to the law, in my opinion, because you're abusing children. And I also would possibly, might be a stretch, but I think we could probably look at some trafficking laws here as well. You might be work trafficking these children? What about child labor laws? There's got to be something that the government can do, that the authorities can do to shut this shit down because this man is not of God. There is no God in this man whatsoever. We're going to see more of that as we get deeper into the story. Again, episode 2 was so freaking hard for me to watch. Um, Again, they taught this children that the only real lesson was being obedient, that to question Ron was to question God. I wrote here in my notes, which is perfect explanation. The rules of the Honor Academy were meant to separate you from yourself. You were not allowed to date. So when they come to the Honor Academy, if they have a boyfriend, they're instructed to break it off. So now Ron is controlling who you romantically partner with. This is insanity. This is absolute insanity. They preached purity culture. They used Josh Harris books. I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which was big in season 1 of Shiny Happy People as well. Even I believe Josh Harris has come out and like said my book was a terrible idea. It's all about like courting, all that. It is. It's a terrible idea. You should not do that. They had accountability partners. So it wasn't as much as also, just being pure in your actions. You had to be pure in your thoughts too. So if you had an inappropriate thought, if you saw a guy across the way and thought, oh, he's hot, you were having evil thoughts. So you would have to go to your accountability partner and confess that you've had these thoughts. This is a snitching culture. This is what's called a snitching culture. This is exactly what happens in Scientology. This is exactly what happened in the Third Reich with the Yahtzees, because we can't say the N word here on the YouTube. It's a snitching culture. They even had you snitching on yourself. They called it running for forgiveness. So if you did something that probably wasn't bad at all, if you had a thought or you maybe looked at a picture that of a pretty girl or pretty boy, something that isn't hurting anybody that you can just keep to yourself. You were trained to go run and tattletale on yourself to the authorities at the Honor Academy. This was a regime of total control. This brings us to the LTEs, the life transforming events. So they were taught through experience. This experience ended up being multiple days of trauma and torture. They taught kids how to lie to authorities because they convinced the children that because they were Christian, they were going to be persecuted. They were going to be murdered, unalived for their beliefs. Now, again, I know we see this happening in other countries, but we don't see this happening in the United States of America. Get real. Like in the United States of America, evangelical Christianity is the largest religion. No one's going to come after you. No one. In fact, it's the opposite here in the United States. I personally, as many of you know, have received countless unaliving threats because of me going through the missing books of the Bible or me practicing yoga, all these types of things. I have got a file full of unaliving threats from Christians who are obviously just like Ron Luce, worshiping Moloch. That's who their God is. That's who the God of the Bible is, right? So it's just crazy. But with these young kids, they're scaring them. They're creating this idea in their head that they're going to be persecuted. And not only are they going to be persecuted, but they're going to be unalived in a horrific way. They had one event called the Unreached People Group, and this was in the back 40 acres of the lot. Half of the kids would be missionaries, and the other half would be tribal people. Now, was so unbelievably inappropriate, and I don't blame the children for this because they didn't know. I blame the adults for this. This is highly racist, highly inappropriate. They would have the kids who were playing the missionaries had to go back there where the other kids were dressed up as what it appeared to be mostly fictitious, like cultures from around the world. They would speak this foreign language. The missionaries would have to figure out, the missionaries would have to figure out who their God was. As one of the participants in the documentary said, this was basically called like Christian LARPing. But what's happening in these exercises is these children are being stripped of their empathy, they're being stripped of their compassion, and they're being stripped of their humanity. They're also being taught that their culture is superior to other cultures. God comes in so many different forms and flavors, right? God is in everything. But they're being taught that they are the exclusive only way to God is through this particular Western culture. And so they're being trained to go into these different countries and show absolutely no respect to the customs and cultures. They are losing every single bit of their humanity. And the thing is, watching these participants in the docu-series, The Whistleblowers, absolutely, these people 100% have their humanity now. They are probably super compassionate, empathetic people now. Obviously, they figured it out or they would have never have left the cult to begin with. But I will tell you, Ron Luce, this is absolutely textbook for a malignant narcissist. He's training these children to be malignant narcissists, to be what he is, because it's his way or the highway. It's his flavor of Christianity or nothing at all. In Ron's head, it seems like, in my opinion, he reckons himself to be the Messiah, and he is the God. You are to worship him and you are to obey him because he is synonymous with God. Bullshit. Now, another life transforming event that is absolutely even more terrifying was this thing that they would do. It was carrying the cross, even if it kills you. And what they would do, because these kids were living on campus, right, is they would bang pots and pans at 3 a.m. and they would take you and your little group blindfolded in a truck and they would drive hours away in the middle of the night and drop you off with no money, no cell phone, and a big old 6 foot cross. And you and your friends had to figure out how to get back to the campus. You didn't know where you were. Again, you had no money. You had 2 days to get back to Texas on foot or however, nowhere to sleep, no food to eat. You couldn't ask anybody for food or for a place to sleep. You had to figure this out yourself. To ask somebody was to show that you had no faith in God, because if you have proper faith in God, then God is going to provide you with food, transportation, a place to sleep, all that kind of stuff to get you back to campus. I am horrified by this. This is nothing but torture. Torture. Although there is a very funny part in the documentary where one of the participants talks about how they were dropped off somewhere in Texas, and one of these girls was like, "How come none of these cars are stopping to help us?" And the guy's like, "Well, we're a bunch of white kids carrying a cross. They probably think we're looking for the sheet store." Did their parents know that this was happening? Did their parents know that their children were being dropped in the middle of nowhere, with no money, no cell phone, and a 6 foot wooden cross and told to get back? Like, this is crazy. Like, all these things that Ron and Dave are doing to these children, Jesus never did this. Jesus never did this to people. He never did this to people. He loved people. He respected people. He fed people. He washed people's feet. He did not torture children. He did not try to isolate people from their family. He did not physically abuse people. And he sure as hell did not take his disciples, who were full-grown men and women, these are still children, into the middle of nowhere and tell them to get back. And if they dare try to ask for help, then that shows they have no faith in God. This is bullshit. This is absolute bullshit. This is fascism. This is tyrannical. And I am just so proud of these people for speaking out. I am so proud of everyone who participated in this for speaking out. And just like any good narcissist, in 1999, in April of 1999, something very tragic happened in the United States. I was in high school when this happened. I remember when this happened. And this was the Columbine. And I can't say a whole lot about it because of the pew-pews, because we're on YouTube, but you guys know what happened. I mean, everybody knows about Columbine. And like any good narcissist, Ron Luce decided to take advantage of this. He created this whole story that a lot of these children who were my age were unalived because of their faith in God, which we now know was not true. They were unalive because they were confronted with a maniac. But he used this. And at this point, these children were taught that it was cool to be unalived for their faith. They were taught that the most valuable thing that they could do was to be unalived for their faith, to die to their faith. Now, my question, and something I cannot wait to ask the Boltz siblings, because I don't know Ron Luce. I'm watching this jackass on this documentary talk about this and manipulate these children to think that they literally have to give their lives. And I'm looking at this dweeb with his mullet, and I would be willing to bet money that there's no way in hell Ron Luce would take his own advice. In fact, I'm sure that Ron Luce, if somebody came in with pew-pews to these events, would probably hide behind these children. Because in my opinion, Ron Luce is a coward. After Columbine, the Honor Academy became even more intense. They had what was called ESOL, which was emotionally stretching operation of a lifetime. And this was flat out physical torture and abuse. These children were stripped of their names. They became numbers. They were started going outside of the handbook, so outside of what was expected to be traumatized and tortured. They had, I mean, physical things done to them. They were beaten. They had water spray, waterboarded, basically. I mean, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And it was all under this guise that they were training themselves to be a military to protect God. No. No, this is abuse coming from a narcissistic sadist, in my opinion. This, however, gets the attention of what's called the Arlington Group, which again is so freaking terrifying. I am definitely, when it comes to politics, I am a conservative when it comes to politics, but I'm a conservative because I want to conserve the Constitution. I in my private life am not conservative at all. Like I don't live a conservative life. I actually live a pretty progressive liberal life, but politically I just want to conserve the Constitution because I believe the Constitution is set up to give every human being the best opportunity. I believe we're all equal. I believe in the freedom of speech. I believe in freedom of the press. I believe in the freedom to practice your religion any way you want to if you're not, unless you're, not hurting somebody else or coercing other people. And I absolutely do believe in our Second Amendment. I think that's what keeps us protected. And that's what protects us from the government. It's what protects us from any type of tyrannical situation. There's a reason why our forefathers gave us that. They just finished a revolution. And so they wanted to make sure that we were prepared to protect our own sovereignty. But it is people like the Arlington Group that give people like me a bad name because I don't have anything in common with the Arlington Group. I don't believe the Arlington Group are actually conservatives because from their political perspective, they're not trying to conserve the Constitution. They're trying to overhaul the Constitution. They're trying to strip people of their rights. They're trying to strip people of their sovereignty. They're trying to force our government into a theocracy, which again, as we spoke about in the beginning of the video, is not what this country stands on. We are not a theocracy. We have freedom. Freedom. Listen to me, Ron Luce. I know you're probably watching all these videos because just like a good little narcissist, you want to see what people are saying about you. Narcissists don't care if the attention is bad or good. They just want the attention. So listen, Mr. Ron Luce, we have freedom in this country. I have two ancestors who fought in the American Revolution to ensure that myself and even you, Pookie, even you would have freedom. But what you are doing is you are pushing your beliefs onto other people, and you're doing it through coercion and abuse and manipulation. That is not granted to you in the Constitution. If you want to worship Moloch, you can worship Moloch all you want. But the minute you start trespassing over other people's civil and human liberties, you've gone too far. And this Arlington Group is no different. To me, this Arlington Group is 100% a terrorist organization. It is fascism, and it should be put on the watch list because their beliefs are not good for anybody. for anybody. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're Buddhist. I don't care if you're an atheist. Their beliefs strip people of their humanitarian liberties, of humanity. These are not beliefs that lead to a free society. In fact, most of what I see from the Arlington group, as I was taking my notes, I just got Mao in China and what happened in China. That's what I see from this Arlington group. And this, my friends, is why it's important for us to have freedom of speech so we can call the shit out. So that Amazon can put documentaries out like Shiny Happy People to warn people about the potential of this happening, because we have to be each other's brothers and sisters keepers. We have to make sure that if I am fighting for my own freedoms, then I'm sure as hell going to also fight for yours. Because if we make sure that we keep each other free and sovereign, then that means we have the best country in the world. And that's when people are truly happy, is when they're free to express themselves as God created them, not as Ron Luce sees fit, but as God created them. And Ron, you are not God. So Ronnie boy, Pookie here, he was invited to join this terroristic, in my opinion, group called the Arlington Group. He also partners with Charles Colson, who went to prison because he did bad things with Nixon, and he became an evangelical Christian in prison. I have my own opinions on this. This is when my conspiracy mind kicks in. I think that he definitely is working for the establishment, because we know the establishment covers all these bases. So he partners with Ron, and they create this whole thing called Rewired. Rewired is like a video publication of all these DVDs that's basically Acquired the Fire meets the Honor Academy meets Hollywood, like on crack. And it's putting these videos out. They take templates from like The Matrix, other movies, to really sell it to teenagers that they are the only hope for our future and that people are going to come unalive them because they're Christians. They really want them to, invoke this angry Jesus so that these kids join their cause and start hurting other people in the name of their cause. And this is all preparation for the biggest indoctrination of all, which was the battle cry. Which leads us to episode 3, which in fact is called Battle Cry. We open in episode 3 with Ray Boltz, the father of Liz and Phil Boltz, the evangelical celebrity, the singer, coming out of the closet as gay. So when we talk about homosexuality and Christianity, this is a huge hot topic, like red button issue. And it always confused me because, like, why? Why do you care what other people are doing in the privacy of their own homes if these are consenting adults? And rest assured that crimes against children, when it comes to that, the P word, I can't say that on YouTube, that's not a heterosexual issue or a homosexual issue. That's a human issue. And I think, from my opinion, whether you're homosexual or heterosexual, we don't consider the P people to be part of either of these camps. I have a lot of friends who are in the LGBTQ. These are good people. A lot of my community members here are in the LGBTQ. It does not matter to me. I don't give a crap who you are attracted to. Love is love. And if it's two consenting adults, where's the problem? It's none. When people try to control other people's sexuality, that's when we know there's, in my opinion, a demonic influence. Because you're trying to control something that frankly has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you. People are allowed to do what they want in the privacy of their own homes if everybody involved are consenting. When we talk about homosexuality in the Bible, whoa, you don't want to debate me on this one, because I have studied this Bible. I have studied the missing books of the Bible through and through. And most of you on this channel have been along with me for this ride. You can't pull the wool over my eyes when it comes to this one. When the New Testament speaks about homosexuality, Jesus doesn't say anything about it at all in the canonized Bible. There's no mention of it at all. The only thing spoken about homosexuality has to do with Roman law, with the government, not with religion. And again, my friends, here in the United States, we're free. I totally support any human being having equal rights. This is absolute ludicrous that a person of God who claims to be of God would try to control another human sexuality. That's crazy to me. It's crazy. Now, when we get to the missing books, the Bible, Jesus does speak about relationships. Do you know which relationship he preaches against? The one relationship he preaches against in the missing books of the Bible? Polygamy. Polygamy, which is rampant in the Old Testament. So riddle me that, Batman. Jesus says nothing about this, about homosexuality. The only, in any of the transcripts we can find, the only relationship status that he speaks out against is polygamy. That's it. That's it. He even says that divorce is okay in the missing books of the Bible. He says, you know, if you're not in love anymore, it's fine. So, this angry Jesus that these groups, these religious groups are worshiping is nothing but a projection of their own narcissism, of their own, maybe perhaps these people, maybe it's true. Perhaps these people might themselves be gay and they're projecting that insecurity out on the world. I don't know, but it's freaking bananas to me. It's bananas to me. If you are in the LGBTQ, I just want you to know you are absolutely welcome here on this channel and in this community. I frankly don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care your religious beliefs. The only thing I care about on this channel is that you're a decent, good person and that you're open-minded and you're here to learn. That's all I care about, right? That you treat other people kindly. And that's the thing about these fundamentalist Christians. Did kindness just go out of the window? Like, did they just not practice kindness? Because I have not seen 1 ounce of kindness from Ron Luce. Not once in any of this footage have we seen 1 ounce of kindness. We've seen love bombing. We've seen nice, but nice is manipulative. Kind is something totally different. Haven't seen one bit of kindness. Not when Phil Boltz had his appendix taken out, not with the children that he is responsible for at the academy. No, everything we have seen with this guy is control and manipulation. That's all we've seen is just darkness. This man is not a light in this world. He is darkness. We also see here with this battle cry, this mergence into politics, which we talked about at the beginning of this episode, about how sometimes with these groups, it's really not about the religion, but it's about using the religion to manipulate people to control them for dominance. I, again, don't understand this. I do not understand why other people want to control and dominate other people. Like, I have a hard enough time trying to control my dog on a leash. I do not, my own life is enough for me to keep up with. Like, I do not want to be in charge of anybody else. Like, this is to people who want to do this, to want to have this authority and this control. It is very fascinating to me because why? That just seems like a lot of work. Why? But that is what I believe a lot of these people are doing. Again, I don't think that Ron Luce, I think that he's not of God. I think that he is part of the system. He's part of the establishment, and he's working the system and he's working the establishment in order to gain control of the public through the youth. You know who else did that? Hitler of the Yazis, because we can't say the N word or the H word on YouTube. He did that too, through the youth. All right, this is not Ron Luce isn't some genius who thought of a new way to program and control people. This has been done before. Okay? We just need to wake up and see this pattern and realize this ain't it. They started showing up, of course, in the early 2000s with the gay thing. We had this mergence of allowing gay people to get married. I lived in California at this time. I 100% supported it. I still do. I think everyone should have the freedom because I do want to conserve the Constitution. I believe that every human being in this country has the right to pursue happiness. As the Declaration of Independence says, you have the right to pursue happiness. What my happiness looks like is not what your happiness looks like. And that's what makes us individual, unique humans. And we're here living that. And so if you are attracted to women, if you're a woman attracted to women or a man attracted to men, and you fall in love with another same sex person and you want to spend your lives and commit your lives to each other, you should 100% have that right. Absolutely. I remember when that Proposition 8 was being tossed around in California, and that the fun joke was like, gay people at that point had not ruined the sanctity of marriage. Straight people had. Us straight people had ruined the sanctity of marriage. So we can't talk about that. That should not be a talking point of this equal rights. But they started showing up to these events. Like in San Francisco, they went to protest. And the whole time I'm watching this, and I'm like, this is Westboro Baptist Church. Like, this is no different than Westboro Baptist Church. And they are very, very evil. So I'm embarrassed for people involved. Like, not for the whistleblowers. Like, you guys are super courageous, and I've said this before. Like, when people are able to talk about their past, like being in cults, I find that super sexy, and I think that's incredible when people are actually able to talk about it now that they're clear. And you guys were all young, like you were young kids. Your mind had not fully developed yet. But for the adults that were there, that were in charge of this, I'm actually embarrassed for Ron Luce. I mean, why? And again, I say, like, this is not what Jesus did. Like, what's that one documentary? Like, Jesus saved me from your followers. Like, this is nowhere near how he behaved. Do you know what's really funny? And I can't wait to talk to the Boltz siblings about this. In one of the missing books of the Bible, I can't remember which one. If you guys can remember which one, put it in the comment section. Do you guys remember when we were going through the missing books of the Bible? And there was, in one of them, they were doing psychedelics. Like Jesus and his disciples were doing psychedelic. Like they were high AF. Like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like why they would do that. They're searching inside themselves. Like Jesus was not being violent. I mean, this group was violent within their own insular group, and now the violence is spilling out into society. You're dehumanizing people by showing up to protest people's marriages. You're dehumanizing God. Like that is not what Jesus would have done at all. Like at all. And speaking of what Jesus would have done, let's talk a little bit about Danny. I referred to this in the beginning of the episode. If you broke a rule at the Honor Academy, you were immediately kicked out. No questions asked. No, like no means for there's no grace is given to you. Like no mercy, no grace, which Jesus, Yeshua, was all about mercy and grace and listening to people, listening to understand where someone was coming from. That's a sign of compassion, of empathy. They have none of that. There is no grace. And it was so easy to break a rule. Their rules were absolutely ridiculous. We all would have broken the rules, right? Because you look the wrong way, you breathe the wrong way, you ask one question, you're gone. And you're paying a lot of money to be there too. Do you think you get a refund? No such luck. Well, Danny, who was this beautiful singer, she still, I believe, is a gospel singer, she had done the unthinkable. She kissed a boy. And because she kissed a boy, she was kicked out. Now, once you're kicked out, everybody else at the academy can't speak to you anymore. You lose all your friends. You lose your identity because your identity has become this cult. And then in order to get back in, you have to basically reapply and show that you've repented, right? It's guilt. It's a guilt cycle. And it seems to me as an outsider looking in, this was horrifying that they kind of made Danny be in this music video about this like dirty woman. If you guys, I mean, the music video that they showed clips of in the documentary was horrific with all these men at once. And all she had done was kissed a boy. They basically shamed her. They shamed her when she kissed the boy, and they shamed her when she tried to repent to come back, and they publicly embarrassed her. I mean, there are no redeeming qualities about Ron Luce. The fact that you would do this. I hope to God that Ron does not have a daughter. He might. I know he has kids. I think he has kids. But oh my God. And I hope that Danny has gotten therapy because I made a comment in on one of her TikTok videos like that was not okay what they did to her. I mean, none of this is okay. But that was below the belt. That was below, way below the belt to do that to a young woman, to paint her out to be WHORE, like she's taking multiple men at once, all because she kissed a boy. And then publicly, I mean, I just, how are you the poster child of righteousness when you do that shit? What about ye who is without sin may cast the first stone? Jesus, Yahshua, hung out with the ladies of the night. He sat and talked with them. He didn't shame them. He didn't humiliate them. Are you so repressed that you think it's okay to do that to a young woman? Ron Luce, you're disgusting. You're vile. And if this is what you're willing to show the public about who you are, I would hate to see what you are like behind closed doors. They say that the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is that psychopaths cross the line and unalive people. I know that I believe Ron is a narcissist, but I also actually believe he's a sociopath too. My opinion. Because what this man has done and continues to do is so inhumane. It's so gross. It appears to me that he has like no respect for human life. And guess what? Jesus or Yahshua had the utmost respect for human life. Hence why the only type of relationship he said was wrong was polygamy, because he respects human life. And those women who get tied up in polygamy normally are not put there by choice. Choice. To love someone, to kiss somebody is not a sin. It does not make someone dirty. What you did, though, by trying to publicly shame a young, vulnerable woman, is below the belt of sinning. Ron Luce, I hope you understand that one day you're going to have to go before God and you're going to have to explain to God why you treated his children like shit. You're going to have to atone for everything you did to these kids. I mean, in my opinion, it's unforgivable what you've done, but I'm not God. Unforgivable. It's not like you've done a couple of bad things here and there and it's fine. You keep doing this shit over the decades. And I actually do hope you end up in prison one day because I think that's the one place you're going to be where you can't hurt anybody else in the name of God. That's so, not, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know that's one of my biggest pet peeves. I cannot stand when people use God as a weapon. And that's what you've done, Ron. You've used God as a weapon. God is not a weapon and you do not own him. You do not own God. You do not get to dictate how individual people worship God. That's the individual's choice. It gets even worse though. So while these kids are paying bacoodles of money to go to this academy and they're going around helping, I mean, they are the labor that is running Ron's project. They're the labor. That's why I think there's potential if the government's willing to look into it. I think the government can potentially get him for child trafficking, for work trafficking, labor trafficking. Because these children are paying and they're working and they're running this project. While they're out, they're given $5 a day for food. and they have to trust God that the rest will be provided. I mean, $5 does not even buy you a freaking drink. Corey said, one of the guys said that one day he ran out of money and he had no money to buy more food, so he just decided he was going to fast that day. Like, this is starvation. This is denying people of their basic human rights, which is a red flag for a cult. This brings us to kind of the end of episode 3. There obviously is a lot that I'm skipping over, so I do encourage you to go watch season 2 of Shiny Happy People on Amazon Prime, especially if we get people on to talk about their experiences more in depth here on this channel. Um, I'm just hitting the highlights because I do want you to go and have your own experience with this documentary, especially if you grew up in an evangelical church. Hopefully, this will be very healing for you, maybe give you some closure over maybe some trauma you're still carrying. But at the end, I've been saying her name Mika. It might be Micah though. I'll have to double check. Mica, Mika, Micah. She, or the ringleader, Ringo is her last name. She creates a website called Recovering Alum. And I actually pulled it up, you guys, because it's still up. It's amazing. I mean, I'm definitely going to probably read through this thing because wow, this is so crazy. Um, to share the stories of what everybody went through and to really call out what this is, that this is child abuse and that this is a cult. And she initially did it under an anonymous name, so that people would see her talking points and not her. Because again, she already left and had been blackballed by the academy. So I think that was smart of her to not put her name in the beginning. And all of a sudden, all these people started submitting their stories, and more and more and more and more and more stuff started to come up. It becomes a snowball, basically, a domino effect. And here we are with Shiny Happy People season 2. So I encourage you guys all, if you want to read more about this trauma these kids went through, I will put the website down below. I absolutely encourage you all to go and watch the documentary, even though we're ending this video right here on this ending on this talking point. I am planning on obviously bringing some of these people on Esoteric Atlanta to talk about their experiences more informally with us so we can learn and use their trauma as, in a positive way. What the devil will make for bad, God will use for good, so that we can protect ourselves, protect our children, protect the next generation from this type of spiritual abuse. And I just hope you guys go and watch the documentary so you're better prepared. And if you have any questions that you want me to ask, then please put them in the comment section below. I'll hold on to them. So when I get some people on this channel, we can ask away. So if Mr. Boltz happens to see this, I feel like I need to call you Mr. Boltz because I think your kids are around my age and I'm from the South. I think it's fantastic that you decided to live authentically as yourself. And I think that that is an incredible expression of God because God creates all of us. God's a master artist. And to as Victor Hugo writes in Les Miserables, to love another person is to see the face of God. And the siblings, all the people in this documentary, I have so much respect for, and I applaud them and I thank them for being vulnerable. I've said that before in this episode and other episodes. When it comes to exposing cults, I will be your biggest cheerleader because I think that's so sexy when people can actually admit what happened to them and tell the story. I just I know it's hard for people to do that, but it is so sexy and it's so inspiring. And I thank you so much for being brave enough to sit on a huge documentary team and be vulnerable and talk about these experiences. And I think that you literally, I don't know what other people's religious beliefs are now. I will ask the Bolts that question when they come on. I don't know what you believe now, but from my perspective, what these people are doing, they're literally doing the Lord's work. When you're able to, I'm going to get emotional. When you're able to be vulnerable and talk about your pain and your trauma, you are connecting to human beings on a level that is Christ-like. When you're able to show that humanity and that humility, that is Christ-like. When you're able to give yourself compassion and space to heal, you learn how to do that for others too, and you show others that it's okay. It's okay to be perfectly imperfect. It's okay to love God, but also love Limp Bizkit or you know, Oasis, right? It's okay to my favorite books to read at night are murder mysteries. Doesn't mean I don't love God. These are all fictitious stories. It's just a mind tickle for me to Mr. Whodunit. And that's okay. As human beings, we're complex, we're nuanced, we're shades of gray. And this quirkiness about us, our little personality traits, that's what makes us unique. Just like our own fingerprints are unique. And you can be a unique individual and still love God. And so I thank all these people for being brave enough, every single whistleblower out there across the board. I thank you for being brave enough to put yourself in that position, to swallow your pride, to be vulnerable, and to do everything you can to try to protect somebody else from going down the same road you went down. I thank you for being brave enough to try to hold these people accountable for their crimes because I know that's really hard to do. I thank you. And to the Boltz siblings, I thank you guys for being so funny and being able to laugh about the situation. I think that shows a huge level of healing that you've done. And I definitely I would love to be at your house for Thanksgiving because it seems like your family is a very joyful family and a very delightful family in general. And Mr. Boltz, if you're watching, it seems like you raised some pretty cool kids. And I hope that your whole family is living in happiness and that when there is love, there is God. And yeah, with that being said, be nice to each other, be kind to each other, don't try to control each other. And as long as you're not hurting anybody else or messing with kids, you have the right to do anything you want in this country. You have the right to pursue whatever happiness that looks like for you. And I hope you get to do that with strength and with courage. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you think of the documentary. And hopefully, we'll have some people on very soon to go even deeper into this story.